And welcome to Catholics Coast to Coast. Always fun when we get a chance to just have some great conversations as it deepens our walk with God. And of course, as a musician, I always love talking about music and bands. Ways to do that also deepens our connection. So no matter how we can get closer to God, it brings us closer together in the meantime. So these are some of the great tunes of our ears as we understand God's Word better, understand the elements within Mass, and also how we can share those with the world. I am Ace McKay. As we get into our Coast to Coast this week, make sure you check out Podcast Central, EWTN.com/podcasts. And while you're there, click on the Rome Boys, because if I were to say to you, tie up your camel, would you know how to implement in their challenge this week? As it applies to our faith, they're going to go a little deeper and explain what that phrase really means as we head into the summer with the Rome Boys on this week's Catholics Coast to Coast.
We have these discussions, and it's been a while since he and I talked, but one of the things that we shared was the story from the Quran that talks about this exact same thing, which this might be off-putting to some, but it's interesting because Islam is a very large religion, if not the second largest, and behind Christianity. But it says, tie your camel up and leave the rest to God, because the story goes that a man left his camel untied outside the shop, and somebody said, "Hey, you need to go tie your camel up," and he's like, "Oh no, I'll give it to God. He'll take care of it. My camel won't walk away." And he says, "Oh no, tie your camel, leave the rest to God." Like you have to do your part.
Welcome back to Rome Boys. Today we have a special guest joining us is Dr. Greg Popcak. Is that?
Yep, that's right. Slovak.
All right, cool.
There's a little check mark over the C in Slovak. It makes it sound like a CH.
Okay,
Nice.
Yeah. Well, we're from German country, so neighbors.
Yep.
Dr. Greg Popcak is the founder of CatholicCounselors.com, a group, Catholic pastoral telecounseling practice that conducts over 30,000 sessions per year with Catholic individuals, couples, and families around the world. He and his wife, Lisa, are the authors of over 20 popular books on marriage, parenting, sexuality, spirituality, and mental health. The Popchaks host More to Life, a call-in advice program airing each weekday on EWTN Radio and across North America on Sirius XM Radio, Channel 130. They are also the founders of Catholic Home, Households on Mission app, which provides online marriage, parenting, and grandparent coaching, as well as creative resources to help Catholics build strong, faithful marriage and family lives.
Welcome, Dr. Popcak.
Hey, good to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, our main work is through CatholicCounselors.com, which is a Catholic pastoral telecounseling practice. I have 20 full-time pastoral counselors that work on the team with me, and we do marriage, family, and individual pastoral counseling with folks all over the world. Really, last year we did 30,000 sessions altogether. So, praise God. But yeah, so I mean, and we started out in 1999 doing telecounseling. Got a little ahead of the curve. But so we've been doing it for now 27 years almost, and then of course we do the radio program that's on EWTN and on Sirius XM channel 130, and that's every day, Monday through Friday, and it's a call-in advice program from 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern. Where we really kind of unpacking practical applications of St. John Paul's theology of the body. We always talk about it on the show how, people wonder, how can theology really help me in my everyday life? And, the theology of the body is really very practical, because St. John Paul was really looking at, if we took a look at everything that, God's given us, salvation, history, scripture, creation, what universal principles could we discern about human flourishing and having healthy, holy relationships? And so his answer to that question became what we call the theology of the body, but it's eminently practical and useful. So our whole mission is really unpacking that on the show, through the practice, through our books, and all of that. So
wow, that's great. 30,000 sessions? Mm-hmm. Is that at the standard psychology rate?
So I do have a practical question. So going back before your professional bio began, how in the world did you go from, this is what I want to do with my life, and I'm going to go strike out on my own? Because, on the show, my phrase is, or, my tag name, or I guess My stage name? That's weird. Anyways, we don't have this figured out.
Your superhero name.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
your alter ego.
Did you go straight from education into practicing and working for someone else? I mean, what gave you the courage to become an entrepreneur? Because that's what you are.
Yeah. Well, so my dad was a professional photographer who had his own studio.
Okay.
And growing up, so I grew up. I still live in the Rust Belt, but I grew up in. Actually, if you're familiar with the movie The Deer Hunter, I grew up in Clairton, Pennsylvania, which is the first place that The Deer Hunter was filmed, and then I lived like 10 miles down the road from Mango Junction, Ohio, which was the other place that Deer Hunter was filmed. And so it was very much steel town, and so everybody else that we knew in our family worked for the mill, basically, and so I grew up seeing the difference between what it was like to work for somebody else versus what it was like to have your own business. And I just never really learned to work and play well with others. And that's in the sense of in the professional sense. And so I always wanted to kind of have my own practice. So when I got out of grad school, I did, you have to work for other people for the first couple of years at the very least to get your license. And so I did that. But as soon as I could, I started my own practice. But, I always wanted to do ministry. I mean, in fact, I thought I was going to be a priest from second grade on. And so I went into seminary my freshman year of college. And I discerned out that same year, but it was, it wasn't because I didn't want to do ministry. It was kind of because I thought going into seminary that at the time that was the only way or the best way to do ministry in the church. And, I kind of came to realize over the course of the year that there were other ways to be ministry, and that lay ministry is a legitimate expression. And so we, as I was doing my own practice, I continued to pray. Lisa and I continued to pray about, how we could turn this more into a ministry. And that's eventually where our first book, For Better Forever, A Catholic Guide to Lifelong Marriage, came out in 1999. And I had done some sessions by telephone because back then, desktop publishing was the new thing, right? So everybody was putting out a zine. And so I'd written for some zines and had done some telecounseling for parents based on some articles I'd written there. And when the book came out, I started getting people looking me up again. I mean, I'm dating myself, in the white pages of all things, and calling me and saying, hey, we're really looking for some Catholic help for our marriage, or, for this issue or that. Can you point us to somebody? And at the time, there wasn't really a network of Catholic counselors at all. I mean, so I thought, well, this will be my bit for the church. I'll do 2 or 3 sessions a week, and within 6 months, I had to close the face-to-face practice because I was getting so many people reaching out. And since then, we've just had steady growth to the point where we now have 20 full-time counselors and growing, 20 books, and the radio program. So God's been very, very generous to us, and we've been very blessed to be able to use the gifts that He's given us to bless others. So. And the pinnacle of it all is me being here with you guys right now.
Oh my! You guys have
checks in the mail. Checks in the mail.
Well, that being said, so we're in a mental health crisis, right? Suicide, depression, anxiety, all on the rise. Yeah. So how do we get into it? This might take the rest of the show. Okay, how do we get into this, and then how do we get out of it? From the mental health perspective, and then also our faith. What can our faith do to help us change the tide?
Yeah, so I'm going to get into the question in kind of a weird sort of a way, but if I don't know if you're familiar with the author Terry Pratchett at all, but he is a sci-fi kind of comedy writer who has a book called Good Omen, Bad Omen. He has several books, but there's one called Good Omen, Bad Omen, and in it he's kind of describing the end of the world, and he has the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse as 4 bikers in a gang. And famine rides in, and famine's a big deal. He invents this diet food that you can eat as much of it as you want, but it has no nutritional value, and it starves you to death slowly. And which I thought was clever, but I think that is the case for us and connection. We're more wired and connected than ever in human history, and lonelier than ever.
Yeah.
We're gorging ourselves on connection that doesn't satisfy us. And I think that's famine, and so I think the mental health crisis is really rooted a lot in that. I'm not blaming screens per se, but I'm really talking about how relationships have changed.
Yeah.
How we don't live in proximity to family anymore. We don't know who our neighbors are. We kind of have the illusion of connection and friendship because of the online world, but we don't really connect in any meaningful way with a lot of people, and we're not meant to be alone. I mean, Scripture says as much, right? And so, when that social part of our being is threatened or frustrated, we start to break down, and in fact. Interestingly, so anxiety disorders, for example, are skyrocketing. The reason for that, though, it doesn't have anything to do with the fact that there are more problems than there used to be, because problems don't really cause anxiety. It's lack of connection, right? So if I'm having problems, but I'm surrounded by people who love me and support me and who are kind of cheering me on and helping me out, I'm not anxious. I mean, I might have concerns, I might be frustrated, but I'm not anxiety ridden. But if everything's going fine, but I'm alone, I could still be anxious, and that's hardwired into us, right? Because if I'm a Neanderthal walking through the woods by myself, I could get at by a saber-toothed tiger anytime. I got to be on high alert, right? If I'm walking with my tribe, then I've got people to have my back. I can calm down, and so we're just hardwired when we feel alone to be anxious. And so the more alone we feel, the more that's true. And sometimes we can feel the most alone when there are people around us because we don't learn to relate and connect. But I think that's the heart of it. I think the very fact that even when we're with people, the online social relationships have dumbed down the idea of connection and friendship to the point that even in-person relationships don't satisfy us.
I find it interesting what you just said about being, Neanderthals walking around getting hit by a saber-toothed tiger. You're always on alert, always on alert. Yeah. Well, nowadays we're always looking at this screen, and people are walking into traffic, walking into signs, and because we're not aware of what's going on around us. And another thing that hit me was like, we're trading FaceTime with FaceTime, on a screen. And I was thinking, I had that thought this morning. It's like, this is how the robots take over the world. We're surrendering to AI instead of I am.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong. But I think the more we, and it's seductive, right? Because the more you're on the phone, scrolling, doom scrolling, all that, you're getting those dopamine hits constantly. It's like it's like a low grade casino, where I'm going to pull the lever again. Oh, that's an interesting reel. Oh, pull the lever again. Oh, that's an interesting song, or what, and we just kind of keep that constant hit of dopamine that says, everything's good. I feel good. But we're not connecting, and we're not doing the things that give us meaning. And again, another aspect of mental health is having a life that is really rooted in meaningfulness, intimacy, and virtue. And that's not a theological position to take. There's a lot of research that backs up those things in positive psychology, for example. And meaningfulness refers to, my confidence in my ability to use my gifts to make a positive difference in my environment or be a blessing to others in some way. Intimacy, and of course, having connection, like we were just talking about. And virtue, being able to use whatever life throws at me as an opportunity to become a healthier, stronger, holier person in some way. So even the bad stuff, I can take advantage of and get something out of. And the more I can lean into that meaningfulness, intimacy, and virtue, the more I, generally speaking, can say that I'm mentally healthy. But I think that all of those things are being undermined.
Yeah, whenever. So we live in a rural community. Although I've lived in some of the top 5 largest cities in the country, even my kids would make the observation that I've seemed to make when I moved right out of high school to a major city, where I felt I was around all these people, but I had no connection, and I was more empty than I had ever been. My kids, when we go through big cities or travel, they say, gosh, there's all these people, but they don't even know each other. Even my children get that. And so I feel like that's kind of an analogy for the social connectivity, but complete emptiness, like you mentioned, famine, consuming so much, but there's no substance to it.
Yeah, when you were talking about famine, I thought you was going to go with, he didn't show up because he ran out of gas.
Famine. And I don't mean to disparage cities in that analogy. That's not my intention.
No, of course.
But it is interesting that when we look at where crime is the highest and where anxiety is quite often measured to be very high, and maybe even participation in mass, is down compared to what compared to the population, as a ratio, because there's more that go to our church that live in our community, in our rural area, and I think it's because they are not always around people, and so it draws them in on Sundays to actually have that connectivity and community. So it's kind of the reverse, because when I'm in the city, I'm just ready to get away and relax and have some peace and quiet, I guess. So I had someone call me recently who was breaking down crying, and she's helping someone.
That was in confidence, man.
She.
Oh, okay. Sorry. My bad.
She was helping someone
Bad
that
joke.
was that needs her help. But I always say you got to put your own oxygen on first before you can help the person next to you. And so my suggestion was just have a 3-day silent retreat. Don't, look at your phone voluntarily. Only pick it up if it rings. Don't turn on the TV. And so already there's been a positive response where cutting off.
Yes, she was watching the news.
Yes, it was the news.
Okay.
Absolutely. The world's coming to an end. And even things of, people of Christian backgrounds saying, doomsday things, it still will, tear you down.
It affects your thoughts, and that fasting and separating yourself from that's not reality. Like, get in tune with, like you said, community and other people, and yourself.
We're in the season of Lent as we record this now. Would you make some suggestions, or do you mind sharing some things that you might suggest during a Lenten season to help people manage their anxiety?
Yeah, and I think this, since like we were just talking about, dealing with anxiety depends a lot on the strength of my connections and the health of my relationships. I like to point out that Lent is really about relationship, because all the things, the traditional practices that we do for Lent, the fasting, prayer, almsgiving, it's all meant to help make room in our lives to receive more of God's love and then share that love with others. I think we can sometimes get lost in that, and we think, I'm going to give up chocolate, or I'm going to give up this random thing or that. And I'm not knocking that. That's whatever you want to do is good. But I think what we need to remember, ideally, is behind all of that is the intention that we're clearing out the space in our hearts that's choking out God's love or our ability to share that love with others. And so, being able to use this time in Lent to ask, if I'm going to make sacrifices, one of the areas I can make sacrifices to strengthen my relationships and ideally decrease anxiety is by sacrificing, the fact that I tend to love my comfort zone more than I love the people in my life. My wife will ask me for something, and there's nothing wrong with doing it. It's not like it's immoral or demeaning in some way. I just don't feel like doing it, right? And so I say no, because that's just not me, or I'm not comfortable with that, or hey, you knew who I was when you married me. Why are you asking me that? And we put up those obstacles and blocks to intimacy and to connection. And I try to remind people that God gave you the spouse He gave you, not just because He has a warped sense of humor, but because He's trying to bring something out in you. That by responding generously to the needs that your spouse has, you're responding to God's invitation to grow in ways that you wouldn't grow if He hadn't placed them in your life. And so, in Lent, I think a really meaningful sacrifice would be to ask, what are the times when I've been choosing my comfort zone over love? and what could I do to really sacrifice that? In terms of service, what could I do to make more connection and really kind of reach outside of myself to try to, well. So another practice that my wife and I will do, for example, is in the mornings after we have our brief prayer time, we'll just ask each other, what's one thing I could do to try to make your day a little easier or more pleasant?
That's great.
And just that's a sacrifice, right? because I want to do what I want to do. I want to be concerned with my stuff, right? But now she's told me what she needs, so I guess you have to do something, No, I mean it's a privilege, and I love to be able to do it. But being able to have that conversation, and I think that's a meaningful sacrifice to make for the sake of love, and enables us to kind of give more to each other. So I think looking for those little ways to make stronger connection with God and with the people He's placed in our life could be the best way to kind of combat a lot of that anxiety. I will say another thing, though, of course, a way of connecting with God, especially since we're talking about Lent and the Passover, of course, during Holy Week. During the Passover meal, and I talk about this in my book Unworried: A Life Without Anxiety. There's a prayer called the Dayenu prayer, and basically it translates into "It would have been enough." Right. So the Israelite or the Jewish people will review kind of their salvation history. It's like, it would have been, you delivered us from Egypt, and that would have been enough. Right. But then you led us into the desert by a pillar of cloud, and that would have been enough. But then you led us by a pillar of fire, and it would have been enough. But then you gave us manna in the desert, and if it would have been enough, but then you gave us water in the rock. And the point is this whole gratitude story. Right. And we can all do our own personal Dayenu, where we recognize, Lord, okay, you brought me out of this situation where I really thought I was done for, and that would have been enough. But then you did this for me, and then that would have been enough. But then you did that for me, and really taking that time to review that own personal salvation story that God has led us in. And interestingly, brain research shows that we can't be grateful and anxious at the same time. That gratitude really destroys anxiety, and so on a neurological level, and so really calling to mind, as trite as it sounds, those gratitude journals or making those lists of things that we're grateful for, or doing what I was just describing, that kind of Dayenu prayer, really does help combat anxiety by reminding us of where we've been and how God has been with us. And I think it ties in. And I'm sorry, I'll shut up after this.
No,
St. Paul talks about making a sacrifice of praise. St. Paul talks about making a sacrifice of praise, and it is a sacrifice because often we don't feel like praising God, right? But whenever I can make that list of those things, those little ways that God has blessed me today, even or over the past week, or much less, over the last 10 years, He's helping me connect with the gratitude that reminds me that He's present, and I don't have to be afraid. And I don't have to be anxious. And so those are all some small ways that we can fight back against anxiety.
I wanted to ask you about, because how many sessions you've been in with married couples, and the majority of your books on marriage and family. So what do the Catholics that are listening that are married, like what is the secret sauce? What is necessary to have a good, healthy marriage? And yes, read all of his books too.
Yes, dear.
It's a funny line, but I would actually disagree with that, because I think that we need because we need to be true partners to each other, and like I said, really listening to each other and learning from each other, because God gave us the spouse that He gave us because He wants us to grow in ways that we wouldn't grow if they weren't in our lives. But kind of coming back around to the secret sauce, it's easy to dismiss it, but I really can't ever stop beating the drum for couple prayer. I like to say that you can have a marriage with Christians in it, but you can't have a Christian marriage unless you're praying together. Because the whole point, right, of Christian marriage isn't just saying, okay, God, I'm going to go out and build this marriage and family life and you just bless it. I don't know how to love this person you've given to me, at least not the way you want me to. So I went to this church and I made these promises because I want to spend the rest of my life learning how to love you the way God wants me to. And so we can't do that unless we're going to God every day and saying, okay, Lord, teach us. What is it to help me to be the husband that my wife needs me to be, the man you want me to be today, not just in general, but today? What does that mean now? And So that's something, again, that's actually the prayer that my wife and I start the day with every morning when we wake up, is just, what is it? Just reflecting a little bit on what would it mean for me to be the husband that she needs me to be, or for the wife that I need her to be. And, just praying for the grace to do that. So I think that's really number one. Not just saying prayers, right? But really praying, and asking God to teach us how to have the marriage and family life that He wants us to have, and then using all those spiritual tools, whether that's the Rosary or the Divine Mercy Chaplet or other devotions, Liturgy of the Hours, as an opportunity to really listen to what God is saying to that request, but really starting from the heart and asking Him to teach me. So that's number one. I think the other thing I sort of tipped my hat on earlier is the biggest temptation is that we all love our comfort zones more than we love our spouse, and so looking for little ways to challenge that every day, because that's how we grow spiritually. That's how we grow in intimacy and connection. You'll find that when couples first get together, they tend to build the relationship inside their comfort zones. Right. And so everything feels great because they're doing for they're just happy anybody's doing anything for me. Right. But then as you spend more time with each other, you start realizing that there's a lot that exists about your spouse that's outside your comfort zone. And if you just say, well, I'm not going to go there because that's just not me, then you end up growing apart over time, and the relationship just feels small. And so you either have the choice to accept that and let the relationship kind of fall apart over time, or you challenge yourself to love your spouse more than your comfort zone, and assuming that they're not asking for something that is immoral or demeaning in some way, then you do it, or you figure out how to do it over time, and you're patient with each other while you're learning that. But I would say that those are the two biggest things that if I could give anybody something to walk away with, those would be the big tips that I think make Christian marriage especially thrive.
And it seems like seeing the world through the eyes of the other, and not so we're so focused on ourselves. That's all we think about is ourselves, right? But be
Right.
focused on what are they thinking about and what can I do for them? And like you said earlier, anticipate and then think about their love language and other ways to be able to reach them in those little ways, because those little ways build to something so much bigger. Looking long term.
Learning what it means to tie up our camel and how that applies to the world. Kind of an odd phrase within itself, but I digress. Great stuff from the Rome Boys. Always easy to find at Podcast Central when you go to EWTN.com/podcast. And of course, subscribe wherever you like to stream so you don't miss future episodes. I am Ace McKay. When Catholics Coast to Coast returns, we're going to have a Catholic conversation, because a podcast of the same name is allowing us to check in with Steve and Becky, who are sharing stories and experiences in their home life and how that is helping them to navigate parenting teens and young adults through the summer. So everybody's home. So as we dive in, we'll get into it next with Catholics Coast to Coast.
Another great podcast on EWTN Podcast Central is The Beatitudes. Dr. Greg Popchak, pastoral counselor, popular Catholic psychotherapist, author and co-host of EWTN's More to Life Radio, offers eye-opening reflections on Catholic fatherhood based on his book, The Beatitudes, 8 Ways to Be an Awesome Dad. You can hear this and other faith-filled podcasts at EWTN Podcast Central. Visit EWTN.com/radio and click on Podcast Central today.
Greetings in Christ, everybody, and welcome to the Catholic Conversation. I am Steve Green, Director of Holy Family Institute of Catholic Faith and Life, and I am the Cradle Catholic.
And I'm Becky Green. I'm the Director of the Green Homeschooling Institute and everything else in our lives. I'm the convert to the faith. I have to apologize to my husband because I'm sitting down next to him, but I didn't have a chance between my little workout I did this morning and our recording schedule to run in and do a little cleanup, shower,
Did you at least put baking soda under your arms?
So of course I did, but
Great. We're going to be fine.
That's going to neutralize everything, but here's the problem. So we're down to one shower in the house. And there's, we have a young man that's come home to go to school in state. So now that young man who was the guy in our house who used to take like 3 showers a day, and then
used to take 3 showers a day.
I can actually graph for you. I could show you a chart of the water bill before Donovan went off to school. Then the water bill while he was off at school.
Yeah.
And now the water bill that he has returned.
You could turn that into kind of a little game. Actually, you could just be like, okay, I'm going to show you 1 year's worth of our water bills, and I want you to try to guess.
He's here.
Just using the graph of our water bills for a year. I want you to tell me when Donovan was in California and when
Your sure lock in your skills.
that's the only data point you would need because it's that dramatic a difference. Yes.
So now, of course, being down to one shower, which is in our room, our bathroom, this means that everybody has to rotate in and out to use that, because now the other shower, it's not like one of those simple things that you need to fix. Like, oh, we got a little leak. We've got to get a new valve or get a new, faucet head or whatever. No, something broke on the handle, and it does not exist anywhere in the universe anymore. It is not manufactured. They don't have the information of how to do it, the human beings that have the skill level to do it.
Yeah, I think we're actually homing in on a solution here, because I do now have the official parts numbers for the 2 parts we need. One is the handle, one is the valve cartridge on the shower in the guest bathroom, otherwise known as the kids' bathroom upstairs. But here's the problem. So, dear listener, perhaps at some point the handle has broken off in your shower, and you looked at it and you're like, oh, this is a Pfister or a Moen or a Delta or one of the brands of plumbing appliances that you can get at Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever. So
it's an alien.
No, ours is none of those. Not even like the cheap Glacier Bay or whatever. This brand, Wolverine Brass. First of all, it doesn't even say what brand it is. It just has WB. So we had to do like this detective mission thing to figure out what brand it was. It's Wolverine Brass. Who cares, you say? Well, I'll tell you why you should care. Because if you have Wolverine Brass appliances and plumbing appliances in your home, you are up the proverbial creek without a paddle, because they do not sell Wolverine Brass commercially or wholesale commercially anywhere. It is only available to plumbers. Only plumbers can get Wolverine Brass.
It can't even be like, you can't be a handyman.
Yes,
and plumbing.
And not all plumbers are even aware of the existence of Wolverine Brass, because I called plumbers, like actual plumbers. I did call a handyman. He couldn't help me. Then I called actual plumbers, and only one of them had ever even heard of Wolverine Brass. So what I ended up having to do, because I called a plumbing supply store who also does not carry Wolverine Brass, but they had heard of it. He said, here's the customer service number that plumbers use. Take pictures of your shower, the broken handle, the cartridge it broke off from, send those to their order department and ask for the parts number. Once they give you the parts number, we should be able to order those parts for you. So this is just getting the parts. We haven't even replaced the darn thing yet.
No, and you don't even know, because it's the more that we dive into this, it's almost like we're at that point where we're going to have to cut off this part of your house, really, to get
there is a possibility that this
this is going to shut down the grid for this entire region of Dobson Ranch area. I mean, like, it's nuts for a stupid hand.
So I just want to say to the plumber who installed our guest bathroom shower,
oh, you don't want to.
Thank you so much, dear sir, for installing a plumber's only brand that even certified plumbers have not heard of, and making it virtually impossible to replace.
It might be from when.
If I ever meet you, I would like to shake your hand, and with my free hand, punch you directly in the face.
Then you'd have to go to confession, so you don't want to do it.
It would be so worth it. Yeah, so anyway, pray for us. We're somewhere in this great epic saga of trying to get a second shower operating.
Opportunity to jump into our shower before this started, because Donovan was taking his shower to go.
His first. Yeah, not his shower. You say that like, well, Donovan took his shower. Yeah. He showers more often than he brushes his teeth. And he does brush his teeth regularly. He just showers far more regularly.
So that is why I sit down next to you. But
It's kind of like there's three of us here. There's
Oh, here we
you
go.
and me, and then the atmosphere.
You just said I'd be fine if I
It's like
done
the
baking soda.
it's like the Holy Spirit.
I'm not-
Oh no, I'm kidding. Actually, you smell fine.
Well,
You don't sweat. You glisten.
listen, and I did a workout, but it wasn't like it was like a hard, like brief, short, which is what you're supposed to do at my age. We don't need to do this long stuff. No, 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 no. It's just short and to the point, and then get it done. And then I feel like for a few minutes I walk around and I'm like, well,
Well, and I do. So, dear listener, I do also want to point out, for those of you who are loyal listeners, all three of you, you may recall at one point that our little green family dumpster fire anecdote was Becky seeing on our shared photo drive a video pop up of me doing some strange exercises in my office in like regular office clothes, a collared shirt. And she thought, he's making an exercise video. He's going to put an exercise video out on the internet. And so she came home and confronted me because we hadn't talked about this. She didn't realize I was positioning myself to be one of these internet exercise gurus.
well, I just wanted the background to be cleaned up a little bit if you're going to do that. That was not a great background.
It was not a great background. It was the open closet with all my shirts and books and binders. Anyway, so the point being, what had actually happened is I had found a video of a range of motion protocol. Yes, a 10-minute daily range of motion protocol that helps to keep you loose and limber well into your aged years. And I am certainly at the cusp of elderliness, so I thought that'd be a good thing. So rather than buy the program, I just recorded myself mimicking the moves that the guy was doing on the video. And I'm just going to say this, I took a little bit of grief for that from my loving wife, who, after she discovered I was not trying to make an exercise video to sell online, then just thought it was absolutely hilarious that her husband was doing this goofy looking range of motion protocol. And then she thought it was actually really funny, all the moves that I was doing. And then she was horrified to discover that I was actually doing them at the gym where other people could see. And she thought, what if they know that you're married to me? I'll never be able to show my face in public again because my old man here is doing these goofy moves. But what Becky was doing this morning was just doing the workout that she found online.
So the difference is I don't film myself doing it. I save the little reel where they're showing it to you, kind of they give you the brief ones, and then you can click more to get their program. Well, I'm not going to click more and buy your program.
Yeah, get yourself on some kind of program.
I'm going to just keep watching the same reel over and over again. And when I get to the next exercise,
keeping it real.
Yeah. So I could follow. And it was a movement one where you can, I got to even kind of go up slightly into a handstand for one of them. It's kind of one of those ones where you got to try to move your whole body and go into weird positions and then come, but not yoga. We don't do that. It's like a movement one. Why?
Yeah, perhaps you remember mine, which is also a movement one.
Maybe it's just the way you did the movement.
I see where we're going with this.
These people that were showing it to me on the video, because they made it just for me, I can tell you. They had they had the look of having done the movements for a while and
they were I would say they were fit and trim. And yes, I would say that it was fairly clear that they had been doing these movements for some time. They're very, very smooth and expert at them. And that's assuming they weren't just AI.
No, they weren't. They were real people. I could tell.
You could tell. Okay.
They were real people, and it was like
beautiful and kind,
doing little handstand things. The background looked real, like legit, like it was a legitimate thing. So anyways, all of that to say, that's why I sit down next to you with a little bit of neutralized with baking soda, sent to myself perhaps, and a little glistening, and I didn't fix myself up for this here interview. But that's okay. Now, if you were in that situation, though, you might be able to procure yourself some cologne from the aforementioned Donovan, who takes like 3 showers a day, because he now has some in his possession.
He's bought some cologne. That's true. I'm sure you're wondering what motivated our son to purchase cologne. Well, that's a great question. There's many facets to the answer. One of the facets is our son is now dating. He is dating the lovely daughter of Catholic Kelly and Ryan Zook, our good friends and sometimes co-conspirators on this show, and frequent generators of anecdotes. However, it wasn't enough just the dating thing. There had to be a special event added into the mix, which would motivate him to purchase cologne. And that event, dear listener, is drumroll, the homeschool prom. Oh, yes, you heard that correctly. The homeschool prom.
Okay.
There's a homeschool prom. I feel like I should, yeah, just say that and then just sit silently for a couple of minutes to let it sink in.
Let that sink in.
There's a homeschool prom. This is a new event. This is a novel event, which I think, and this is a term that I have invented for the concept in general, and then for each and every one of the specific complicating factors and facets of this event.
You're going to get so much hate mail for what you're about to say.
Yes, I am. But I have big shoulders. I can carry people's hatred around with me if necessary. I've done it before. The term I would use to describe the concept and all the moving pieces contained therein is promposterous. This is a promposterous event. And part of that is, so I've learned a lot. Dear listener, I went to an all boys boarding school for high school. We did not have a prom. It would have had to have been a gay prom, which, as you know, is against church teaching. I wish prom was against church teaching, but just the first part. At any rate, I did not go to my high school prom because we did not have a high school prom. Allegedly, and this did come up, so prom did come up in my junior year. Apparently, at one point, there was actually a prom. St. Lawrence was the name of my high school. Apparently, at one point, there was a prom because St. Lawrence had synced up with St. Rita's all-girls Catholic high school in Milwaukee, and they had a joint prom. Only it was such an unmitigated disaster that they stopped. It was like, no, this is a terrible idea. What were we thinking? This is done. However, although I did not go to my high school prom, I did go to prom. I went to prom years later as like a 20-year-old as a friend / favor to my friend. I'll call him Bill. His not his real name. His real name is Brian. So anyway, Bill approached me and said, would you be willing to take my sister? She doesn't have a boyfriend or anything. She'd love to go to prom. Just as a friend. And it was actually, his sister's super cool. It was fine. It was great. But I actually got to experience prom, like the whole thing, the lead up and the limos and the tux and dress and all the whole thing. Which she handled all of it because I was just coming along as basically just her friend / guest so that she had a reason to go to prom her senior year. And my whole impression of the thing was, whoop-de flippin' do. Like, really? This is what this whole thing is about? Like this life-defining, I totally, now that may just be me, dear listener. I may be, as Becky said, alienating all of our I was gonna say viewership, our listenership. Maybe all of you have just beautiful memories of prom and it was the greatest time of your life and you would gladly do it all over again, etc. I don't know. For me, it was just a big meh. And really, this is what all the hoopla is about. So as a homeschooling family, not that I'd thought a lot about this, but one of the pluses of homeschooling is prom does not exist in our world. There is no such thing until there was, which is this year. And so, yeah, there have been all kinds of shenanigans. And one of the interesting things that was actually, this was the reason I actually came up with the term promposterous, is apparently now there's a thing called a promposal.
That's stupid.
There's a promposal, which is in many cases, because don't kid yourselves, we live in the age of the interwebs. You can go online and look up promposals. Some of these things are more elaborate than engagement proposals. I mean, we're talking basically skywriters and hiring the remaining living members of the Bee Gees. And I mean, it is crazy over the top. And this is just
to ask
someone a problem, which of course, then once someone starts doing promposals, everyone has to do promposals, and there's a competition about whose promposal was the most elaborate, took the most time, the most expensive. This is promposals.
So our topic today, what we are actually going to get to, this is sort of the conversation.
This is our smooth segue.
Yes. We're here to chat about this. We're going to talk teenagers. And Catholic adolescence and the parenting project on all of that. And we're just going to kind of share sort of where we're at.
Coming to you, by the way, just to make this point, and then back to you, Becky, as non-experts.
That's exactly it.
Do not by any means confuse us with people who have the whole raising teenagers figured out.
I think that's pretty evident. That doesn't need any.
Everything we say will demonstrate that.
It's for the conversation about it to kind of like, as we flesh out these moving pieces. I was at a retreat recently where I was presenting at, and we were sitting at lunch, and it was a homeschool moms retreat. So it's like pretty niche, right? Like we're all doing the homeschool thing in different ways. Some are in hybrid, some are doing eclectic. So the reality is as we enter into this phase, there's a lot of prep work on the front end as you're raising them as young kids, and then grade schoolers, and then as they approach the preteen years, and then of course the teen years. There's a lot of things that go into sort of your intentionality of what you're planning and preparing for, of how we want to do things, what are our policies, what are our protocols, but until you get to that place and you have the different personalities and temperaments and the different dynamics in the household and the different sibling relationships and the different friendships within the community that you've been cultivating, and how those families are operating and doing all of this, and they're also kind of flying by the seat of their pants a little bit. And so it's like you have all of that enters into the equation, and then you just dump that into hormones and normal dramas of life and the stressors of life, and there's this just giant pot of stew of just all these different ingredients, and you're trying to navigate, okay, how do we properly cook this and not overcook it? How do we not undercook it? How do we not miss an important ingredient, do too much or too little of something? It's really quite a journey, and that's the journey that we've been on. The kids in our home are aged, well, obviously Michael is off at school. Donovan was off at school for a couple quarters. He's back now, and he's going to be going to school locally and working. And so we have 20, 18, and then Avery is 15 and a half, essentially, just got a driver's permit. And Caleb just turned 13, and then Kateria's 10. So we're in that particular phase.
Teens and teen adjacents.
Yeah. And it is just whirlwind, and it's beautiful and fun in a lot of ways. It's also been very challenging and very discouraging at other points, where you kind of think about, did we do anything right? Can we do anything right when it comes to these children? And yes, so then the whole process of having a homeschool prom enter into the equation. Yeah, I was not myself super enthusiastic about it, because again, we've been trying to do things a little bit countercultural, and it feels like an insertion of a secular like event into the homeschool model and in the worldview of how we've been building community. And now you can already see sort of the things that we said you might potentially see, which is, do you go as a person by yourself? Or do you go with a group of people? Or do you go with a date? And if you go with a date, then does that person have to do this special promposal? And does that imply that there is a relationship there? Or are we just friends? We got to use all the just friends terms. But then there's all these pressures around you if there are people who are coupling up. And then those who would like to just go and just have fun with their friends, some of their friends are coupled up, so they would normally just go with that group, but they can't really because they're by themselves. All those things come into play, and it's like, oh, that doesn't have to be a part of the equation. We could just have them all over at our house, like we do. like we do sometimes, what feels like every other week.
Well, you had a prom. You went to prom when you were in high school.
Sure did. And I also was not a normal person.
She was a
I
gymnast.
was a gymnast.
They're like real people, only much smaller and bouncy.
Yeah. So my life as a gymnast was, I went to school with all my teammates at the high school next door. In the morning, early on, we had a class just for us. They'd said it was like an independent study class. They had a teacher that was hired to just be there. I think it was like our history and government type stuff. And then we went over to the gym. We worked out for 3 hours. We had lunch over there at the gym. You'd scrape off the chalk and you'd try to fix your hair up so you could go back over to school for a few hours for all the rest of your subjects. And then we came back over to the gym and worked out for another 3 to 4 hours. That was my life. So inserting into the high school, we were already kind of outside that scope anyways. And so we did go to prom, a group of us. And I don't know, it was just an awkwardness.
Dear listener, oh dear listener, if you only knew, we don't have time for the full recounting of Becky's prom. Some young fella had the opportunity to take Becky to prom as part of this large group of friends, and
He was legitimately a friend.
yeah,
And legitimately just a perfect gentleman. But I was just mad because I was like, you better not think that we're anything more than friends. So the entire evening, I made sure I gave off those vibes. Gosh.
if you've been listening to our show for any length of time, you know that you don't generally need a decoder ring for Becky. You'll be able to pick up on what the deal is.
So bad. I Facebook messaged him like, I don't know, 25 years later. And I was like, hey, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry if I was kind of rude to you. And he's like, I didn't really remember. I had a good time. It was a lot of fun. I'm like, that's great. I'm so glad.
He was just being he was just being gracious. Actually, after you Facebook messaged him to apologize for how hard you were on him for being your date to prom, the very next day he went into his therapist and said, I think I've had a breakthrough. I think I might pull through.
I was just,
I love that story so much. Anyway,
recovered. I
yeah,
think he's recovered.
so the reason that we went on this rambling tangent, besides the fact that we're us, is so included in all the preposterousness of this is the fact that so the way it's working out. Well, actually, even this is just modified recently.
Don't be too like casual with names that you're throwing.
No, there are going to be no names. No,
okay.
The way it's working out, there's like 4 and now possibly 5 couples, which is just funny in itself how that's all working. But at any rate, some of them are dating and others are just going as friends, and there's been a little bit of awkwardness on that front too, and all that's okay. So but the fellas involved have been kind of trying to put together some plans, some ideas, some cool stuff.
And cool. You know, remember, these are homeschool.
These are homeschool cool stuff that they can kind of incorporate in this whole prom experience. A couple of those we have kind of encouraged them to pump the brakes on because the message and not, this is all innocent stuff, not like bad, but just that might make what's already a little awkward even a little more awkward. So maybe don't do that one. But anyway, as part of this kind of planning thing, they had convened, and we're at a local mall. Malls still exist.
Yeah.
It's possible that they're only populated by homeschool kids. I don't know for sure because I don't do a lot of mall research. They do still exist. They were at a local mall, and they happened to catch a guy who was just closing down.
Can't believe it.
His cologne stand.
No. And
his little
quality.
cologne kiosk. Dear listener, as you know, if you want high quality cologne, you hit a kiosk in a semi-ghost mall in the Phoenix metro area, which is what they did. And it wasn't even that they were looking for Cologne. It's more like Cologne was looking for them.
Navigating teens and a full house at home for the summer. Great stuff from the Catholic Conversation. You want more on this or ones like it? Go to Podcast Central at EWTN.com/podcast. And of course, subscribe wherever you stream. I am Ace McKay. Going to bow out and enjoy the rest of the weekend. You do so. And as we, of course, let God define who we are, I'll see you again with Catholics Coast to Coast.